Hey, it's Aaron, Metal Theologian. So, yeah, so I think it's time to do the long-awaited and much-teased Blue Oyster Cult feature. So I've kind of alluded to this in my last several videos. I've been on a huge Blue Oyster Cult kick. Like, for the last, 2 months, I've been listening to almost nothing else. In fact, I swear, I have I have a stack of records. I'm listening to Exhumer right now, by the way. Possessed by Fire. It's a great record. Well, here's a stack of shit that I've sitting here that I've pulled out for one reason or other to listen to. Like, I watch one of, the heavy metallurgy streams and go, yeah, I'm going to pull that one out because I want to listen to that record. But it's all just sitting there because I've only actually been listening to Blue Oyster Cult records. And it's like, when I get off the kick, then I'll listen to this shit. So that's kind of how it's been going. And if you've seen me, in the Grown Man Record Night chat or anything like that, I've probably only been worse. So we're going to get into it. And I'm going to actually not waste any time because I'm kind of want my little sugar rush here. And that's going to take the form of this Salvavidas, which is a grape soda I found at the Mexican grocery store, which I've never had before. So we're going to give it a try, and then we're going to get into the records. Ooh. The grape is really far forward on this compared with some of them. What's the one? Like the new grape, I think it's called. Has like a yellow thing on the glass bottle. That one, like the grapes. I mean, grape sodas don't tend to be really subtle anyway, right? But that one kind of takes a second to sort of unfold. This one is like grape right in the front. You know what I mean? It's really sweet, but it's really fucking good. Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted, man. When a good grape soda, this hits the spot. I would totally drink this again, so. Maybe it's not the level of that legendary banana soda from a couple videos ago, but this is really tasty, man. And fruit sodas, I don't know, man. They're always a little bit, there's something fundamentally a little bit sort of sketchy, I feel like, about, trying to make a soda taste like fruit when you're not going to use any real fruit flavor. I mean, I assume that this is all, artificial flavor. Yeah, it's like the fourth ingredient after carbonated water, sugar, and citric acid is artificial grape flavor. And that is indeed what it tastes like. But goddamn does that shit hit the spot. Alright, anyway. So yeah, tons of Blue Oyster Cult lately. I mean, to the point where I think I've sort of discovered my inner AOR fan, because some of these later records are really kind of AOR-ish, and I tend to just shut down when I hear that kind of shit, but I swear some of these are winning me over. So anyway, this is sort of my 2 cents worth on the catalog, and one spoiler here actually, I really only have the Columbia albums, so the whole phase after that, basically they're reunion albums, and there have been a bunch more live albums and shit like that have come out too, but any of that kind of stuff, I don't have. And that doesn't mean I won't talk about it eventually, but I haven't been able to track it down, and I don't want to put this video off forever. So the one, actually, and in fact, I got to dedicate this video to Nebulous Prowler, who's pretty active in the Grown Man Record Night chat, but he's also called Nebulous Prowler on YouTube. Doesn't really make videos, but he came through in a pretty huge way after I put the question out a couple videos ago. I was totally prepared to pay for a copy of Imaginos, and I didn't really want to make the video until I had a copy of that in my hands, so I could sort of round out the, the Columbia records, basically. And I could not find that one, and I didn't like the prices I was seeing online. And that dude, I was like, hey man, you need a copy? I found a copy of the record show here, you can just have it. And I was like, dude, I'll pay you for it, you sure? But he wouldn't take any money. So, salute to Nebulous Prowler, and if he ever starts the channel, fucking watch him. But in the meantime, I don't know, we'll just cross our fingers or something, I guess. So I'll start at the beginning here, though. It's funny, so many of these records I've had for a long time, and some of them I've got kind of recently, but a lot of these have been sitting around, and it's taken a long time for them to unfold to my ears. And if there's one thing I really want to say about this band Blue Öyster Cult is that there's a lot going on here. Like, you can listen to this stuff and just sort of, listen to the tunes and sort of enjoy it for what it is, I suppose there's no grave sin if, you like Don't Fear the Reaper and Burning for You and Godzilla and that's all you've ever heard. And, because it works on that level, and if you like them at that level, they have a lot of songs on that level, but you can keep getting in deeper and deeper. There are all sorts of cool little things like hidden in the records that I'll kind of try and point out as we go, but I'm really talking from a musical standpoint more than anything else, Some of the hooks, the way the records are put together in certain ways and shit like that. We'll see if I actually deliver on these promises I'm making as far as the discussion topics. But the other thing that they're sort of known for is having brought in the outside lyricists and that sort of thing, and not exclusively. Like Buck Dharma wrote "Don't Fear the Reaper" by himself, if I'm not mistaken. But they had lyricists Sandy Pearlman, obviously, but Michael Moorcock and Patti Smith and Richard Meltzer. So some people who are known as writers to write these lyrics, which normally is a recipe to just turn me off. But dude, I am so down with all these weird sci-fi and occult themes and shit like that. So I was wearing a t-shirt with this on it about a week ago, and someone asked me what it meant, and I was like, do you want the long answer or the short answer? And it's kind of boils down to I don't know, regardless of which way you answer that question, whether you want the long answer or the short answer, right? Because it's kind of one of those deals, there's all sorts of weird shit going on. And in fact, with the whole sort of Imaginos concept, you sort of build up to that because ostensibly that was there from the beginning. And, that was kind of this whole idea that was underlying this whole thing. That's there, and I appreciate that, but even without that, there's just so much cool shit in there. To me, it's all about the music, and if the lyrics are good, that's a bonus. Well, these guys are full of bonuses. Some of these records, like Mirrors, is not a good lyrics record. I'm trying to think of a song on this thing that actually kind of isn't idiotic, lyrically. And I still like the record. But, it doesn't live or die by that, but when that shit's there, it just brings it. It's like that extra, it's like the whipped cream on your milkshake. You know what I mean? It's it's still a milkshake, but you get that whipped cream and that cherry on top, maybe a few sprinkles, and you're in fucking heaven. You know what I mean? And these guys just deliver that consistently. And that really starts with the record covers. These early ones, especially these first couple that were done by some architect or something like that, some friend of theirs. I don't know. And then, the first thing, the very first lyric on their first album is something that was Satan's hog, right? It's they invoke Satan in their first line on their first record, And it's not like they're a satanic band or anything, It's about the Transmaniacon MC, which is some weird fucking motorcycle gang or something. But meanwhile, what they do is they have, their basic riff, and then they color it with, this descending chromatic line. It goes down, just by half steps, right? And it's just such a simple thing, but it's so perfect, man. So yeah, I love this record. As far as songs on this record that are well known, I'm on the Lamb, but I Ain't No Sheep kind of came to be reworked as the Red and the Black, and really only ever took that form afterwards on subsequent live albums and shit like that. And I'm kind of partial to the original version on this record, honestly. But Stairway to the Stars is on here. Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll. She's as Beautiful as a Foot is a little bit of a clunker of a song. That's where that whole sort of lyrical thing kind of backfires, and she's not all that great, But, Redeemed is this weird sort of song at the end. I read something about it where they're talking about it sort of being as a throwback to, the Stalk Forest days and, that sort of psych thing. But I think it actually ends this record really well, And I actually think, I've said before that I think Flaming Telepaths Leading into Astronomy is, the best sort of album ending ever, Flaming Telepaths is the best second-last song on any record. To spoil Secret Treaties a bit before we get there. But this record kind of does the same thing with Workshop of the Telescopes into Redeemed, And I actually have a 10-inch that I didn't pull. That it's some really early live stuff, and that's one of the songs on there. And that was kind of one of my first inklings of, how great this band is. So Anyway, the very first Blue Öyster Cult record, absolutely essential as far as I'm concerned. Fucking classic. So how do you one-up that cover, but maybe with this guy right here, Tyranny and Mutation. I've actually been spending a lot of time with this album because Eric Bauer got this record. He said this might be his favorite of the early ones. And side 2, it would be overstating to say it loses me a little bit. Because, I mean, I love the songs. Like, Wings Wetted Down is a great song. And the Quicklime Girl song is sort of a hooky little thing at the end. Maybe a little bit throwaway, but still a fun tune. And, you know, it's totally great. But the Red and the Black is the reworked version of I'm on the Lam, but I Ain't No Sheep. It's great. And I don't know, maybe I've heard a little bit too much. But, you know, then I get to OD'd on Life Itself. And I just don't really get tired of that song, you know. Or Hot Rails to Hell, for that matter. And Seven Screaming Disbusters. Lots of great songs, and some more weirdness on the back there too. It's funny, it's all black and white except for a little red, and then I have the special limited edition that just has that blue dot there. Actually, someone just stuck that on there apparently, so that's just how it is. I suppose I could peel it off, but anyway, cool record too. But it's hard to hold off. We're building up to what's probably the best one of the lot here, which is Secret Treaties. I actually bought this at Reckless Records on Haight Street in San Francisco. They're not there anymore, but there is still a Reckless in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, every song on this one is great. You know, ME262 is probably the most recent one that I had stuck in my head for days, you know what I mean? I was telling my kid about it the other day. I was like, yeah, it was about this plane that, you know, was like the absolute shit when it came to like speed, but it kind of had a tendency to like melt the pilot, literally. And he was like, yeah, it's a topic, isn't it? Something else I didn't notice until really recently is you know, hanging out there with the dogs. But on the back, the dogs are dead. So I don't know what that's about, but I'm down. I mean, I really, just about every song on this record is fantastic. Career of Evil is Subhuman, Dominance and Submission. I've almost heard too much, but not quite, man. I can still hang with it. And then like Harvester of KG Cretans is a little bit throwaway for me. But Harvester of Eyes, Flaming Telepaths, and Astronomy, Taking You Out is just, I mean, this record, it feels like it's over before it started. And it's not because it's so ungodly short, it's because it's so ungodly good. By the way, I love the fact that they're like little publishing company. It's called Be Occult. Be Occult Songs. It's fucking hilarious, man. So that brings us to the first live album they put out. It was a double. First of a couple of these guys. Anyway, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. Which is great if you want like an intimidating title for your live record. It's 1974 or whatever. I really don't need their cover of Born to Be Wild as much as I love this band. And the whole Maserati GT thing kind of feels superfluous. And overall, I just don't feel like they picked the best songs to put on this as a compilation, you know? And that bothers me a little bit about it. But I've also spent so much time listening to these guys that if they'd just done my favorite songs, maybe I'd just be sick to death of them. You know what I mean? I probably, maybe not in a million years, but in probably like 100 years, I wouldn't have picked the Subhuman as an opener. But it's interesting for that reason, you know what I mean? It's it sets a tone that isn't really the tone that I would have said. It's a very different tone from the one Career of Evil sets on the album that the Subhuman appeared on, you know? And I kind of got to respect it for that, you know? Yeah, Bucks, Boogie, you know, I've been into these guys enough that I can hang with these long guitar solos, but for the most part, yeah, you know, do I like it? You know, as a huge fan, maybe this is even my favorite band. Yeah, but But ETI or ET Live is probably a better live album than this one, honestly. Even though it has more big hits on it. Hell, even though that one has hits on it at all, because this one doesn't really have any big hits on it. I mean, the biggest hits on this thing, quote unquote, are probably The Red and the Black, Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll, maybe ME 262. Yeah, I don't know, man. So I don't know. I appreciate the fact that they made a live album so early. You know what I mean? A lot of times later on, especially with bands seem to have big hits, the early stuff kind of gets shunted aside a little bit, and I don't really feel like. Well, I feel like they did that a little bit. I don't feel like they really did that, but they still kept enough of the early songs in their repertoire that you never got that impression so much. But it's kind of cool to have a piece where it's just sort of what they would have sounded like in the really early days before they really broke through with an album that I didn't used to like very much, but it's probably my second favorite now. This Ain't the Summer of Love, maybe the best album opener. It's so fucking rockin' and such a weird vocal part too. You know, he sings in this lower register, which is kind of unusual in rock anyway. But you know, it's different from most of their stuff they were doing. ETI is one of my very favorite songs by these guys. I've had that song in my head for probably like 3 days out of every one of the last 4 weeks or something like that. It has I'm gonna try and mix this up a little bit. I mean, it has the big song on it, right? Don't Fear the Reaper, and I might have talked about this in an earlier video, but you know that song was so overplayed for so long, and the whole cowbell thing just was such a damper on the whole thing that I feel like I listened to that first song for real for the first time just you know a couple months ago, and it really kind of blew my mind how fucking good it was. So there we go, a little of this next. This isn't an original, Alan, if you're watching. So yeah, Agent of Fortune. They're another thing too is they have these weird little like synth fills and shit like that. Like on Tattoo Vampire, right off the top of my head. They kind of did that anyway too. They just sort of used it some weird ways, but yeah, that's awesome. And then the weird vocals from I think it's Patti Smith on the Revenge of Vera Gemini. It's funny, like the most mean spirited songs were like her words. It's kind of hilarious. I suppose that kind of is in keeping with her image generally. But anyway, I absolutely love this fucking record. Even songs that are kind of poppy or like True Confessions just vibe out exactly right, you know? There's something so kind of pained about it, you know what I mean? It doesn't sound like sort of throwaway and light. It sounds like there's some like anguish going on in those songs, man, and it just fucking works. I feel like I'm moving really fast, but I don't want this video to be an hour if I can help it, because I don't want to tax y'all's patience. So a couple months ago, I kind of shit on this record a little bit, and then I think I came back and said that I was kind of into it again. I still think Going Through the Motions is a turd, so spoiler right there. That's just a crappy song. And I feel like I said something about that late 70s malaise. I do think you start hearing that on this record. This is 77, and it definitely starts to feel like... I mean, rock and roll was in bad shape in the second half of the 70s. You know, if you listen to this shit, you know that. But there's still some really... And, you know, I think you can kind of hear that in some of the songs in here that are good, too. Like, Are You Ready to Rock? You know what I mean? Even though I've really come to like that song. I didn't like it a few videos ago. Golden Age of Leather, I think, is a great song. That and Death Valley Nights, Chromie D has been working on me about real hard. Well, he's totally fucking won me over. It's great. But, like that little intro on Golden Age of Leather, that a cappella thing where they're singing about raising your can of beer and shit like that, feels a little bit tongue-in-cheek. There's darkness to it, too. I mean, even that little corny-ass part, you know, is still kind of dark. And I respect it for that, but it's, But yeah, you can kind of hear that, disco was ascendant, and people weren't paying as much attention to records like this. It also has Godzilla on it. Played to death, I know, but you know something? It's still a fucking great riff. That's a great fucking song. And then I Love the Night is kind of a gem on here too. So is Nosferatu. So Celestial the Queen. But I Love the Night in particular is kind of, I think it's a great example of how they still manage to bring that darkness in, even when the song's in a major key. You know, on the surface, like if you could have another band perform that and it would be sort of like a happy little ditty as long as you didn't read the lyrics or anything like that. These guys just bring a little pain and a little bit of like darkness to it that just is awesome. Okay, so this really is kind of a throwaway record. This thing doesn't really need to exist. This, you know something? I still fucking play side one of this because Are You Ready to Rock? If I only have a little bit of time, like time for one side of a record and I can't pick which one to put on, I get ETI and I get Astronomy, and that gives me a little dose so I can go do whatever I need to do before I can come back and like listen to a few more full albums. Kick out the jams. I really didn't need them to hear this. And I really, really didn't need to hear them do We Gotta Get Out of This Place. I suppose I should be grateful that this doesn't have Born to Be Wild on it, because I'd rather hear both of those songs than Born to Be Wild. But, you know, it's that, and then it has Godzilla and Don't Fear the Reaper, which, I mean, honestly, are both great songs, but they're on a few other albums, too, you know what I mean? So, is this bad? No, I don't think so. I mean, I really like it a lot, but I'm also a fan. If I were going to recommend like what you should get, this would be pretty low on the list. I saw it at my local shop actually when I was there the other day for $3. It's worth every penny of $3. Actually, it's better than that. That makes it sound shittier than it is, but it's superfluous though still. Alright, so on to Mirrors. Now, this is one of the ones that's the newest to me. This is sort of one of the last ones. This is one of the ones that I went looking for, and I was like, okay, I have all the good records, and I don't have enough, so I need to start finding the shitty ones, right? So there's, like, the joke about... the joke with, like, a big nugget of truth in it, about how, like, UK bands, like hard rock bands from the 70s, if they hung around for long enough, they'd eventually go Southern rock. This is like the American equivalent of that, and it doesn't go full Southern rock or anything like that. I mean, and there's some really good songs too. I mean, I like the song Dr. Music. I like In Thee. I love I Am the Storm. I mean, I really like most of this record, but lyrically it doesn't really deliver on the darkness. What it does deliver is a lot of, you know, They have like these backing chorus. I think it's like 3 women or something like that. But between that and some of the grooves on this, it's like they kind of wanted to go disco, but they didn't commit to it the way Kiss did. You know what I mean? It was like there's a little bit of that vibe in there. Sort of like this guy's tie is a bad sign. You know what I mean? Fuck, that fucking picture's kind of a bad sign in general, even though it's hilarious, isn't it? Like, it's hilarious, but it's not quite hilarious in the way where it's like, I need that, you know? So, you know, I don't think this record's perfect. I think a lot of the songs kind of bleed together a little bit, but there's still a lot to enjoy here. The Vigil is a cool song. I guess more than anything, this one just feels a lot more superficial than most of the ones around it. It's the closest thing they ever did to a disco album, but it's not a fucking disco album. This record is a great case in point for why you should never get rid of records. I say this, I'm like selling off a bunch of shit myself, but I've had this record for probably 20 years, and I would revisit it every couple of years in case you think it was crap. I just decided I love it, like about... Actually... It was after I was on Heavy Metallurgy a few years ago. After the show, I was talking with Marty for a while, and this is one of the ones he had, and I was like, I forgot about that one. I should pull it out again. My entry point for this one, really as well as Mirrors, was E.T. Live, because I had that one first, and just listening to that record all the way through enough times, I got Dr. Music. I got used to that song before, so I had an entry point into Mirrors. And for this one, it was Black Blade. I never really liked the sound on this one. I didn't like the production, which, interestingly, is Martin Birch. fresh off the triumph that was the last concert in Japan, no doubt. Like after producing that monster of a classic. So, this one sounds very different. This is their first record that really starting to sound like the 80s. And it's 1980, so it's a little bit early maybe to sound as 80s as it does. But maybe not, too. It really sounds pretty 1980. And, well, whatever. Black Blade is great. Divine Wind is one of my favorite songs, man. Talk about that sort of groove and sort of bluesiness to it. Hungry Boys is a little bit crappy. I mean, it's not terrible, but that's the song on here that kind of feels a little bit rushed, I think. Yeah, and overall, this is, I mean, talk about a sleeper record, man. I slept on this record for a lot of years, but it's kind of become a favorite of mine now. Yeah, I've been playing this record a lot. Alright. So this one was my fourth favorite for a long time. I actually just got put onto this by my record dealer friend in Colombia a few years ago, but Fire of Unknown Origin, man. And yeah, it, you know, it's the one for the, sort of for the heavy metal soundtrack, and it has Burnin' For You on it. But it also has Joan Crawford, which is great, and veteran of the Psychic Wars. And then it also has sleepers, like, I mean, the opening track, Fire of Unknown Origin, is fucking great. I mean, how can you argue with a song about that? In fact, you know, I was fucking around on my phone a few days ago. I was like, my wife was like in the other room, and I was waiting for her to come back to watch a movie or something. I was just fucking around looking at some Blue Öyster Cult shit. And you know how on Google, it says, it'll give you like other suggestions? It was like, well, other people, people also ask, you know? And it was like, what does Blue Öyster Cult stand for, was the question. And if you hit the thing, it just said aliens. I was like, that's perfect. And there's some explanation underneath that wasn't as good. It's like, what does Blue Öyster Cult stand for? Aliens. There's a part that's like, ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer. But also, talk about a perfect fucking answer, dude. So yeah, Vengeance, The Pact, man. Heavy Metal is a nice little banger in the middle of this. The Black and Silver. And then Don't Turn Your Back is a weird closer for this record, man, that I kind of love, but like, the rhythm of it kind of seems to go against everything else on the album, and like, it totally makes sense, but it makes sense on its own terms. It kind of makes sense the same way Redeemed makes sense. It kind of changes the tone of the album and like sort of eases you out of the whole thing, but without sort of like a come down or like a drop or like it's a throwaway or anything like that. So yeah, great record. One that I definitely would recommend. So I've alluded to E.T. Live a couple of times. And this is it. If you're going to get one live record by them, I think this is probably the one to go for. It's like 82, I want to say. And it has some stuff from across their career. So, you know, you have Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll from the first album. Then you have Black Blade from Cultosaurus Erectus. Obviously, you have the requisite hits from Fire of Unknown Origin. And you have Don't Fear the Reaper and Godzilla. You also have Dominance and Submission, man. Which to me, I don't know, Cities on Flame is kind of like a single, you know what I mean? But Dominance and Submission is more like committing to like keeping the old shit in your catalog. So I respect that too, you know? Maybe this record isn't as weird as some of their other records. Because this probably does come off more like, trying to think of a way of putting it other than greatest hits package. But this is probably as close as you're going to get to like a greatest hits package out of these guys without just getting one of those fucking repackaged greatest hits records, of which there are like 10,000 that came out after they broke up, you know? Or after they went on hiatus, I should say, since I don't think they ever really broke up. If there's one thing on this thing that ages badly for me, it's fucking Roadhouse Blues. Dude, I don't need a fucking Doors cover. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Makes me appreciate Metallica's ability to pick covers. Because fucking Metallica did Astronomy, right? What are these guys doing Roadhouse Blues for? Metallica's doing Astronomy. Alright, so now we're getting to the AOR stuff. This is definitely another sleeper album to the degree that it's a good album at all. But there's a lot to like here, I think. See, a lot of the songs kind of bleed together on this one a little bit. Light Years of Love kind of tries to do, as a closer, the same thing that Don't Turn Your Back does, I think, on the previous album. It comes off as a little bit cornier. It's not necessarily bad. It just doesn't really... It's not in line with sort of that theme and that sort of color that they establish. Probably my favorite song on this is going to be Shadow of California, which you'd think could be some sort of like... I don't know, I hear that title and I expect it to be some sort of like Eagles type of thing, but there's a sort of weird like malice about that song, you know what I mean? Talk about sort of a dark image of California, and not one based on like the usual stereotypes either. It's just like this sort of, you know, bizarro land shit. It says Shooting Shark on it, which appeared at least on one live album. I've seen some live shit on YouTube, so maybe that was the hit, but it's like 7 minutes long or something, so I don't know. Take Me Away starts the album off with a solid fucking riff, though, man. Like, if you want to try and sink your teeth into this one, it definitely, you know, it does one of these where it sort of gives you a boost with that just opening riff right at the beginning, you know? So if you can stomach some of this other, like, cheesy stuff, and frankly, if I can, you probably can, too. There's a lot to like here, you know? Definitely not their best album. But, yeah, I fucking really enjoy it. So this next one, this might actually be my favorite of the bad Blue Öyster Cult records. We're talking Club Ninja here, and I've heard a lot of shit talked about this one, and maybe that's part of why, because I was sort of, my expectations were so low that there's no place to go but up from there. This kind of reminds me of the ads for that movie Krull. You have like your fucking robot guy, except I don't think he was a robot in there, but like throwing that like weird thing, only it's their symbol, you know? Anyway, White Flags I think is a great song right out of the gate. You know, I actually heard somewhere that Danced in the Ruins was their highest charting song, which is kind of a funny thing given that that song didn't have anywhere near the staying power, but definitely some AOR moves on it, but it's a good tune, man, and I like my hooks, you know, so I can totally hang with that too, you know. When the War Comes is this weird sort of dark thing in the middle of a side two with like the spoken intro by Howard Stern of all fucking people. Shadow Warrior is great, and there are like some, you know, ones in here where it's like they're pretty much there with it. It's not quite perfect. Madness to the Method is a great example of that. If there are throwaways on this, I'd probably have to point to Make Rock Not War and Beat 'Em Up. Those two songs definitely kind of feel like afterthoughts, or like someone else was writing them and sort of handed them over to them. But neither of those songs is unlistenable or anything, man. It's not like I skip over them on this record. So, again, some AOR sounds on this thing, some kind of shit that's kind of designed to not appeal to me personally. But there's a lot to like on that record, man. And then finally, bringing it back to Nebulous Prowler here, with the notes still on there. I'll take it off for a moment so y'all can see the cover. The Cliff House in San Francisco. Yeah, so this is like the big closing up concept album, and I think everyone knows that like the band had pretty much fallen apart by this point. I've heard that this is like their most metal record, you know, for like, you know, if you're like into the metal thing, this is the one that sort of delivers the most on that. I think that's true, but a lot of the stuff on this thing too is kind of the sort of stuff that, you know, that I hear on metal records and go, this isn't all that great a record, you know? The songs are really good. Like Del Rio's song is one that I want to point to as one that's kind of a throwaway, but the fact is I just like the hook, man, you know? It's, if you come back and say, dude, that song sucks, you're full of shit, I'll go, yeah, you're pretty much right, but I like it anyway, dude. I Am the One You Warned Me Of, the opener, I think is great. Les Invisibles, or Les Invisibles, however you're supposed to say it, because I don't fucking know. Like, I dig how the backing vocals are on that one with the 777, just because it's weird, you know what I mean? This is just loaded up with all sorts of weird shit like that. The remake of Astronomy, if I didn't know the original so well, and the same thing goes for the song Blue Öyster Cult, which is kind of a remake of the Subhuman. If I'd probably love both of those if I didn't know the originals so well. As it is, I appreciate that they're doing something different with those songs, and it's not that it's unsuccessful. I just like the originals better, man. And the last song on there, this is a little Candlemass next. This is one of the ones I pulled out when I was watching Marty stream. So this is Nightfall. Yeah, Imaginos almost sounds like an outtake from Mirrors, because it kind of has that disco groove to it. And again, it's not like disco, but like it has some of that like shit with the hi-hat and the kind of that sort of funky bass sound, quote unquote funky, like said with tongue in cheek. That kind of leaves that kind of taste in your mouth. And the funny thing is that record's 1988, so I don't really know what the fuck they're trying to accomplish with that, which in a way kind of makes me like it again too, you know what I mean? Because what the fuck are they thinking, It kind of plays into the whole weirdness thing. My feet fell asleep, dude. I was sitting on the fucking floor here, so. But we're almost done. Anyway, Imaginos, have I been playing this one a lot? Yes, I have. Absolutely, I've been playing it a fuckload. So there's one more here, sort of a little bonus record that I actually just got the other night. And that's this one. This is a show from 2012. Actually, I said the other night. I think it was like last night. So I was like in a shitty mood and needed to, a little retail therapy, I guess. So, and what I really like about this one is that it has live versions of some songs that I really like that I haven't seen in other ones, like Career of Evil and The Vigil. And The Golden Age of Leather, Shooting Shark, and then This Ain't the Summer of Love. I'll tell you the truth, I was a little bit disappointed with the live version of This Ain't the Summer of Love. Like, understandably, he doesn't deliver the lower register in the same way, so it doesn't come off quite as menacing as it does on the original studio album. But overall, it's a cool performance, man. It's nice that they do all that shit and that they're not just doing the obvious songs. I mean, yeah, side D is Godzilla and Don't Fear the Reaper. But, this is late enough along that they could have made a record of just obvious shit. And, they didn't. And this record still delivers in 2012. So, once again, what I kind of need to do is track down the records they made after that sort of end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s hiatus, and check some of that shit out for my own edification. So that's pretty much it. That's the Blue Öyster Cult catalog.